So let's talk a little bit about task analysis and user research. To me, both are critical elements in the learning experience design process, and they're both important for different reasons. So, task analysis is really to identify the steps required to complete a task, to clarify the required outcomes and outputs, like the deliverables of a task, and to understand the enablers such as knowledge, skills, tools, and so forth. So, what you do when you conduct a task analysis is that you work with master performers to map out the task at hand as it should be done, right? So, when done competently. And when the task analysis is complete, it shows you what it looks like if someone is competent and doing the task in the work context. So, conducting a task analysis helps us as learning professionals, learning designers, to understand the task in the context of the realistic work. And when you review the enablers like knowledge, skills, attitudes, and so forth, then you also understand which of these can be addressed through a learning intervention. And for which you need some other type of solution. Take a look. And then for the enablers that require learning, the task analysis helps you to design a learning experience that mirrors the job context as closely as possible. No, again. And then for the enablers that require learning, the task analysis helps you to design a learning experience that mirrors the job as closely as possible, which is key for learning transfer and generalization. So making people flexible in applying what they've learned. So doing task analysis, understanding what good looks like, and how good is enabled isn't enough, right? You also need to conduct user research to help you understand the reality of the learner, so the user, who is your target audience, and the one, again. Now, doing task analysis, understanding what good looks like, and how good is enabled is not enough. You also need to really understand your user, your target audience. So that's where user research comes in. User research really helps you to understand the reality of the learner. Um, Again, this is your target audience, the people who are required, who need to learn the task at hand to improve how they work and what they will deliver. Now, if you don't do user research, it's very likely that you'll be making a lot of assumptions about learners, about the users, like what their problems are, what's causing them, and what's needed to solve them. And I hope it goes without saying that if your assumptions are wrong, then you risk designing a learning intervention or solution that doesn't meet the needs of the user, of the learner. Now, beware, right? Because sometimes we jump to conclusions based on our own experiences or a new hot trend in learning. Don't. Um, in my opinion, you need to understand the users. You need to understand the user's reality to design a solution that enables them to learn how to complete the. You need to understand the user's reality to design a learning solution that really enables them to transfer what they've learned, um, which means really enabling them to complete the task at hand in the context of their work competently. You need to use the. Now, user research can be done in many shapes and forms. It's usually a combination of interviews, focus groups, surveys, and other types of feedback. And all these methods only have one purpose, and that's to focus on understanding user behaviors, needs, motivations, and challenges. So use the results of the user research to inform the design of your learning solution so that you can be more confident that learners will actually be able to transfer what they've learned to their jobs and be flexible in applying what they've learned. Um, Ideally, of course, contributing to measurable business results. Now, there's one element missing because it's one thing to ask master performers what competent looks like and what it takes to be competent in completing a task. And it's another thing to really understand your user's reality. But sometimes the topic at hand is not so it's not so easy to clearly define it. For example, in the context of our learning path, feedback delivery, right? What if the master performers are part of a practice or have been applying a practice that's actually not really about giving effective feedback? Maybe they're not applying what we know from research. So, therefore, I just want to point out that a third element that plays into this is scientific research. Like, really critically think, is there anything additionally I need to know in addition to what the master performers and the users have already told me to kind of validate to what extent um, what we know from research, what good looks like, is in line with the data that your master performers and users have. Again, now there's one other element that I would like to call out. So let's say your master performers have explained to you what good looks like, right? So sometimes we're dealing with topics such as feedback delivery that people might not be able to really articulate what good looks like based on evidence. So they might do it based on their experience, but that might not necessarily be the same as what we know from research actually, again. Now, there's a third element that I would like to point out. It's one thing that your master performance explained to you what good looks like, but what if we're dealing with a topic such as feedback delivery, where master performance might not necessarily be objectively master performers? So the point that I'm trying to make is always be critical and make sure that whenever possible, you validate what your master performers have told you with research. So if your master researchers, if the master performers have explained to you what effective feedback delivery looks like, you better go check if there's any evidence from scientific research to back that up. So of course this doesn't always apply, or it's not always possible if it's highly specialized stuff, as in how to do like a safe procedure in a nuclear plant. You might not be able to do this, but I strongly recommend to do it for these topics that might be a bit subjective sometimes.